The innocent street child helps a stranger and ends up living in a millionaire's mansion. Leo was just another shadow in the tangled alleys of the city, a small, scruffy kid with wide, hopeful eyes that flickered like tiny candles against the grime. Life on these streets was a harsh, endless roar of noise and survival. But despite the sharp cold in his bones and the bitter taste of hunger, Leo's heart held on to a stubborn kindness no one seemed to expect. That night, his world jolted out of the usual gray blur. A strange figure stumbled into the alley, tall, trembling, arms clutching something tight against his chest. The man's expensive clothes were torn, dirt-streaked, and his breath came sharp and ragged. No one else stopped. Just the echoes of distant sirens and the murmurs of people too busy to care. But Leo did. With trembling hands, Leo reached out, voice barely above a whisper. "Are you okay?" The stranger's eyes flickered, wild and haunted, like he was running from ghosts only Leo couldn't see. Moments later, his knees gave out. Leo caught him before he hit the cold stone, feeling a weight heavier than the city's grime settle on his chest. Fear, loss, and secrets he'd never guessed lived in these dark alleys. And then, the stranger, who vanished from Leo's world without warning moments ago, did something no one else dreamed of. He invited Leo into his world, into a mansion towering above the city, like a glass and marble fortress, where chandeliers spilled light like waterfalls and silence wrapped around Leo's bare feet. But the mansion wasn't the paradise it seemed. The walls whispered secrets, and shadows stretched long and sharp. People with cold eyes watched him, murmuring about forgotten family grudges and hidden plans he couldn't yet understand. Leo's heart pounded, caught between the safety he'd never known and the fear he'd lose the street parts of him, the parts that made him Leo. Then, shaking hands found a letter tucked beneath the stranger's old desk, a letter revealing more than Leo could believe. It spoke his name with a strange weight, ties to this wealthy world he'd only scraped the edges of, bloodlines tangled deeply in silk and silence. His roots pulled suddenly in directions his heart didn't expect. The mansion's halls grew colder that night. Shadows lengthened as someone watched from the hidden corners, someone who didn't want Leo to belong. Someone who planned to use him, like a pawn in a cruel game neither knew fully yet. Leo's eyes filled with tears, but his hands clenched tight. This wasn't just about shelter. It was about fighting for a chance to be who he truly was. But deep inside, the city's pulse still throbbed beneath his skin, reminding him that even in the richest walls, danger waits in silence, and trust can break like thin glass. Who was the stranger exactly? What had Leo stumbled into? And who was watching him from the shadows, ready to strike? The answers hid just beyond the glow of the mansion's grand doors. Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without notice. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content coming up. And since you're here, smash that like button because it really helps me with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. The mansion's grand doors loomed like sentinels, guarding secrets Leo barely understood. He'd barely settled into the strange stillness when he heard it, a faint whisper filtering through the silence. The sound made his heart race. It was like a distant promise or a deadly warning, weaving through the air. Suddenly, the double doors swung wide, revealing the figure of the stranger, now standing rigid, his eyes bulging, looking past Leo. Panic knotted in the pit of Leo's stomach. "What's wrong?" he managed to ask, his voice small. "Leo," the man breathed out, desperation coating each syllable. "You need to run, now." "What? Why?" Confusion twisted inside him. Just moments ago, he'd been on the street, and now he was in a mansion. yet it felt like he was stepping deeper into darkness instead of light. "Trust me, they're coming." He turned, his once proud posture now hunched, as if the weight of unspoken truths bore down upon him. "Who's coming? You're scaring me." Leo's heart hammered against his ribs. The warmth of the mansion, the fancy chandeliers, it all felt like a trap now. Before the stranger could respond, the sounds of heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway, drawing closer, louder. Something inside Leo snapped. A fight-or-flight instinct ignited, but he didn't know where to go. Suddenly, the air exploded with movement. 3 figures stormed into the room, faces set like stone. Their eyes flicked from the stranger to Leo, and back again. They were dressed impeccably, but the sharp elegance of their suits contrasted starkly with the menace in their expressions. "Is this him?" one of them spat, voice like ice. The words hung heavy in the air. "Get away from him," the stranger bellowed, body tensing to shield Leo. In that moment, everything shifted. A flicker of recognition swamped Leo. It was their eyes. He knew those looks. They were not just strangers. They were part of a past his heart had once whispered about. Shadows from his life he'd tried to forget. "Leo, you don't know them," the stranger shouted, urgency spilling from his voice. They're family." His breath caught in his throat. "Family?" The hairs on Leo's arms prickled. "Family?" He could barely grasp the word. It felt foreign, like a jagged edge too sharp to touch. "Don't listen to him," one of the newcomers warned, stepping closer, smirking like a predator. "He's been lying to you, Leo. He's not your protector. He's the reason you ended up on the streets." "No." The word burst from Leo, raw, shocking. "That can't be true." The stranger's face paled, eyes widening with fear. "Leo, please, just trust me." But the truth was there, carved into the space between them. And then, from deep within the stranger's pocket, a flash of metal caught Leo's eye. A small locket. The same locket Leo had seen 100 times around his mother's neck. A vague memory from a life long lost. "Is this what you were looking for?" the predator taunted, lifting the locket between his fingers. "Your mother's secret? Your past is catching up to you, Leo, and you can't escape it." A shout echoed inside him as the pieces began to fall into place, twisting everything he thought he understood. Family? Lies? The walls of the mansion felt like they were closing in, thick with shadows and regret. Leo's heart raced, wild with confusion and fear. What had he stumbled into? His world was cracking apart, revealing dark corners he never knew existed. "Run, Leo!" the stranger yelled again, desperation creeping back into his voice. But where would he run? Out into the city? Or deeper into a family legacy he never wanted? The answer lurked just beyond his reach, hovering like a storm cloud. And as the confrontation unfolded, he realized he was standing on the edge of something monumental. Who was this stranger really? And what twisted past lay ahead, waiting to pull him back into a darkness he'd never wanted? The mansion trembled with tension. Leo's heart thundered and chaos spun around him. The figures stood poised, as if the mere movement could shatter glass. He felt it, a churning storm of fear in his belly. The stranger, the one meant to protect him, looked like he was crumbling, caught in a trap of lies and deceit. "Leo, listen to me," the stranger cried out, an edge of panic marbling his voice. "You need to make a choice." Before Leo could respond, the air shifted. A loud crash erupted from the hallway. The floor shuddered beneath their feet. An explosion of sound, glass shattering somewhere deep within the mansion's bowels. The lights flickered, plunging them into a flickering darkness. "Now," the stranger yelled, rushing towards Leo. But before he could reach him, a strange glow illuminated the room. Someone had brought a light. "Stop," a voice boomed from the doorway. Leo squinted against it, heart racing. And there, standing defiantly, was a woman draped in a dark coat, her eyes sharp as knives. "You thought you could hide him forever? Live." The stranger's voice twisted with fear, disbelief rushing through it. Leo's breath caught. Live? Who was she? The shadowed woman stepped forward, light glinting off something in her hands. A small object glimmering, a key, but not just any key. "Give it to me, now," she commanded, looking at Leo with an intensity that made his skin crawl. "You don't know what you've gotten yourself into." "Leo." The stranger reached for him, but Leo stood still, rooted to the spot. Everything felt wrong, thick with secrets unraveling. There's so much he didn't understand, and yet, something inside him pulsed, tugging at him. "Don't trust him," Liv hissed, her gaze flicking towards the stranger. "He's not who you think he is. You're in danger." In that moment, Leo felt the weight of the locket pressing against his skin. It's as if the walls around him trembled, vibrating with the urgency of truth pouring out. "What's happening?" he gasped, desperation flooding his voice. "Who are you?" "I'm your sister," she shouted, eyes blazing with determination. The room fell into a stunned stillness, the echo of her declaration swirling around them. Like a clawing wind. "Sister?" The word hung heavy in the air, wrapping around Leo like a shocking vice. "No, that can't be true. Look at me, Leo." Liv's voice broke, a raw rasp tinged with urgency. "We have to leave now. Trust me, please. He's been lying since the day you were born." Leo's mind whirled. The man he had wanted to trust, a guardian angel, now morphed into something darker. Lies piled up between them. The other figures shifted, confusion knitting their brows. With a jolt, the meaning of her words sank like a stone in water. Yes," she interrupted sharply, voice slicing through his stunned silence. "You need to remember your family, your real family." Just then, the front doors of the mansion burst open. A rush of cold air swarmed inside, and heavy footsteps thundered in. Shadows pooled in the doorway, more figures, some he recognized faintly. Echoes of a life, reflected in ghostly faces that flickered like candles in a storm. "What have you done?" one of the newcomers hissed, eyes blazing with fury. It was a mark of betrayal shining through the dim light. A moment stretched into eternity, as Leo's heart sputtered. Were these more family members, friends, or enemies? Everything turned upside down, spinning wildly. They were all connected, but how? "Run!" Liv screamed again, breaking the trance. But Leo felt paralyzed, eyes darting around. Every face, every accusation, every truth swelled in his mind, wrestling for supremacy. He stood at the precipice of revelation. A storm of questions whipped around him. Who was he? Who could he trust? And what darkness had engulfed them all? With a sudden rush, the tension erupted, and Leo's world flipped once more. Only now, he didn't know where he stood or who he truly belonged to. The shadows beckoned, waiting for his decision, ready to swallow him whole. Leo felt like the ground had crumbled beneath him. All around him, chaos erupted. The faces of strangers morphed into icy masks, and yet Liv's gaze held a flicker of something deeper, a desperate plea that seemed to say, "I'll save you, but only if you trust me." "Run!" Liv's voice sliced through the tension, snapping him into action. But Leo's legs felt like lead. He was a ship caught in a storm, tossed in every direction by fate's cruel winds. "Sister?" The word echoed in his mind, sending shivers down his spine. Could there be truth hidden in her eyes? He turned to the stranger, the protector, who had become a shadowed figure against the light. "Leo," the stranger urged, a plea clear in his voice, as if his whole world hinged on the boy's response. But before he could choose, darkness surged. "Get away from him!" Liv shoved Leo back, arms flailing in panic as the cold figures advanced. "Get some sense, Liv!" The cold-eyed man cut in. A snore shook, rattling chandeliers like crash cymbals. Dust rained down. Leo's heart raced. A creeping dread twisted inside him. "What's happening?" he breathed, struggling to keep his balance. "She's not your family," the man barked, his voice like venom. Liv's eyes blazed with fury. "You're wrong. She's my brother." But then, as if summoned by the chaos, a tall figure stepped forward from the shadows, draped in darkness. Leo squinted. Why did that silhouette feel familiar? The room pulsed with tension, Fear gripped his chest, choking every word from his lips. The newcomer held up a hand, and silence fell like a suffocating blanket. "You're all wrong, Liv. This isn't about family." His voice dripped with chilling calm. "Who are you?" Leo managed, eyes darting. The face around him twisted into confusion and fear. Everyone stood still, eyes locked onto the stranger's face, as he stepped into the flicker of the chandelier's light. It was the man from his childhood dreams, the one who taught him the dance of shadows and whispers. A gasp echoed around him. That same face, the same eyes, but filled with a wicked thrill. It was a mirror reflecting every fear Leo had felt all his life. "Leo," the man said softly, as if they were the only two present. "I've come to take you home." Home? The word felt foreign, like it belonged to someone else. He shook his head fiercely, hands trembling. "No, I don't know you. I don't want to." The room erupted in a storm. Of voices, people shouting over each other. "You have to trust me," Liv cried, desperation spilling from her. "Don't listen to him," thundered the stranger Leo thought would keep him safe, voice cracking with panic. "He's the enemy, the source of all your pain." Pain. The word wedged itself between Leo's heart and throat. Everything he thought he knew came caving in. Who was right? Who was wrong? And then, with a sharp intake of breath, the man stepped closer, his voice low, commanding. "Leo, I am your father." Time froze. The word knocked like thunder against his temple. "His father?" "Leo," the stranger shouted again, voice breaking through the chaos. "He's manipulating you." "But Dad," the contradiction of identity trembled on his lips, mixing with fear and confusion. "Trust me, Leo, you're special. You were meant for more than this life," the man insisted, eyes burning with an unsettling intensity. A collective gasp spread through the room, a gust of disbelief. "No." Liv's voice broke like glass. "He abandoned you. He doesn't care." As both sides hurled accusations, Leo stood at the precipice of ruin, heart pounding, mind racing. Could it be true? Was he meant for something greater? Behind him, the shadows lurked, twisting and coiling, eager to engulf him. All Leo could do was stare, caught between two worlds, each claiming him, each threatening to destroy everything he thought he knew. The mansion trembled around him. "Who are you really?" Leo whispered, his heart thudding in his ears. And, for a moment, silence swallowed the room again. The choices hung like a fragile thread, just waiting to snap. Leo felt the thud of his heart echoing against his ribs, the air thick with tension. The figures surrounding him felt like a noose tightening, each accusation sharper than the last. The shadows writhed like restless spirits, waiting for him to choose sides. "Dad?" The word slipped from his lips, light as a feather, yet heavy as stone. The man before him had that familiar glint in his eyes, yet everything screamed danger. "Don't believe him, Leo," Liv shouted, her voice breaking through the noise with a raw urgency. "He's the one who left you. You deserve better." The room seemed to warp, reality blurring, and Leo struggled to think straight. Trust felt like a game, a wager with everything at stake. Just as he thought he might respond, something shifted in the air, a shift so deep it rattled his bones. An explosion shook the mansion. A deafening boom reverberated, splitting the silence and sending glass shards flying. It wasn't how he pictured his night going. Dust filled the air, choking him, and he coughed, feeling the breath leave his lungs. "Out!" the stranger yelled, urgency spilling from him as he lunged toward Leo, grabbing his arm. But the moment their skin connected, something surged between them, a jolt of energy that lit up the room. "Get away from him!" Liv screamed. But it was too late. The explosion ignited a chain reaction. The walls trembling and groaning under the sudden force. The floor trembled like a pulse, and Leo's world tilted. Then the space twisted, warping into something sinister. Shadows elongated and converged. Leo, A new voice echoed, darker and more sinister, rippling through the chaos. It rang with venom, chilling the air. "Who?" Leo started, but his words vanished. A curtain of darkness enveloped them, and he felt the world peel away, reality slipping through his fingers like water. "Let me show you," the voice commanded, and a figure emerged out of the shadows, a woman, draped in a dark cloak woven with glimmering symbols. Her face held all the cruelty of a storm. "You've all been misled." Everyone froze. Even the tension in the room blinked. "Who are you?" Leo demanded, pulling Liv closer, fear hanging like a thick mist around them. "I am your true mother, Leo," the woman announced, voice a mixture of silk and steel. The revelation pinned him to the spot. Every death knell of his childhood rang in his ears like a warning he'd never understood. The stranger gasped, eyes wide. "No, that's not possible." But the denial hung vapid in the air, failing to pierce the truth. Liv staggered back, shock edging her face. "That can't be right. Silence!" the figure commanded, a flicker of power sparking through her words. "You don't remember, but you were meant for this life, Leo." A swell of confusion rose. "What do you mean?" His voice trembled, thick with sudden fear and hope, all mixed together. "You were gone." A twisted smile spread across the woman's face. "I was watching, always. The darkness of this legacy was just waiting for you to awaken." Suddenly, Leo's heart plunged into a pit of uncertainty, an ache he couldn't shake. He had no idea what any of this meant. What legacy? Before she could respond, the mansion shook again, louder, sending everyone sprawling. Dust swirled around, and the light dimmed to a flicker. "This is only the beginning, Leo. They used you, but you were meant to be so much more. Power courses through your veins, a power they fear." "No," Leo whispered, feeling the weight of truth press down on him. His pasts were nightmares vying for dominance, darkness lurking in every corner. "Choose now, Leo," the woman intoned, her gaze piercing through him. "Join me, and together, we will unleash everything hidden inside you." The walls swayed, danger coiling tight around them. In that moment, every breath felt like a gamble. Could he trust her? Was it possible? With faces contorted in shock all around him, Leo's world spun on a dizzying axis, decisions weighing heavy. The whispers of shadows swirled closer, a dark invitation wrapping around him. "Leo, don't listen to her," the stranger shouted, but the words fell into the depths of uncertainty. Lost in a storm of revelations, Leo's heart raced faster, beating against the walls of truth. The question roared in his mind. Who was he truly meant to be? And, as the mansion shuddered under the weight of secrets, he stood there, ready to break apart yet yearning to decide, caught between a dark promise and a shattered past. What would he choose? Leo stood frozen, caught in the whirlwind of revelations. He barely registered the flickering light around him, the echoes of chaos fading into a heavy silence that enveloped the moment. His heart raced, a wild drum against the looming shadows. "My mother?" he whispered, the words tasting like ash. Liv's face twisted with anger and desperation. "No, don't listen to her." But something inside him stirred, a quiet yearning to understand. "You never told me," he murmured, his voice still shaky. "I needed to protect you," the dark figure said, her gaze piercing. "Your true power lies dormant, and they would have used you against me." Before Leo could respond, a sharp crack split the air, and a blinding light erupted from the far end of the room. Everyone squinted as the brightness engulfed them, shadows retreating in haste. It felt electric, alive, filling the space with an uncanny energy. "Stay back," Liv shouted, pulling Leo closer to her as panic crowned the atmosphere. The figures around them faltered, confusion dancing on their faces. But that's when everything changed. The light twisted and morphed, taking shape behind the dark figure. Leo blinked, trying to process what he saw. A boy, no, a younger version of himself, was emerging from the light. His heart dropped. The boy looked just like him, but there was something ethereal, something otherworldly about him. Leo, the figure called, urgency crackling in the air as this new boy pointed directly at him. You have to remember, they're lying to you. His voice sent chills through Leo's spine. What do you mean? I'm you, from another time. I was sent to warn you. You need to get out. They're coming. The boy's expression was a mirror of fear that Leo felt deep inside. Time halted. A wave of disbelief crashed over Leo. What? How? But before he could grasp the enormity of this revelation, the woman, his true mother, stepped forward, rage flickering in her eyes. No, you shouldn't be here, she screeched, as if he were a threat to everything she had built. What are you hiding? The boy shouted, voice full of defiance. You think you can control him forever? Liv gasped, her breath shaking. This doesn't make sense, she cried, eyes darting between the figures. The tension had reached a boiling point, thick enough to choke. But the atmosphere shifted again. Suddenly, the windows rattled. A gust of wind swept through the mansion, flinging the large door open with a violent crash. The air felt charged, electric, as a group of figures stepped through the threshold. They wore uniforms adorned with an emblem Leo had never seen. A crest burned into his memory. Stop, one of them commanded, voice booming as if it could shake the very foundation of the mansion. You're all in danger. Who are you? Liv shouted, stepping protectively. In front of Leo. But before an answer could unfold, the dark figure charged forward, her eyes blazing. Stay away from him, she cried, attacking the strangers with a ferocity that stopped everyone in their tracks. Chaos erupted. Leo's heart raced, a surge of confusion fueled by panic as the boy, his twin, yelled, We don't have time. They'll take you. Out of the shadows, one of the newcomers lunged towards Leo, and in that instant, everything snapped into focus. The boy shouted again, Leo, trust yourself. You're stronger than you know. Leo's chest tightened. Stronger? As he fought against the tumult, a terrible truth unfurled like a dark flower inside him. A thought that shattered every reality he had ever known. Then came the roar of magic, an explosion of wind and energy surged through the room, forcing everyone to stagger back. In that blinding light, Leo felt something shift within him, awakening a deep-seated power he never knew he had. But just as quickly, the boy vanished, dissolving into the light. Leo reached out, but it was too late. As silence fell again, every face turned to him, wide eyes staring, mouths parted in shock. All eyes searching, all pleading for an answer Leo hadn't yet unearthed. And in that moment, a truth burst forth, wild and unattached. It tangled between them like smoke. Leo raised his hands in instinct, ready to unleash whatever had awakened inside him. A realization flooding over him. If he didn't act now, the entire future would be lost. But who? Was he really? Who would he become? The answer felt raw and alive, but the weight of it echoed like thunder in his heart. The beautiful disaster was far from over, and the shadows drew closer, hungry for the secret that lingered just out of reach. Leo stood frozen, caught in the whirlwind of revelations. He barely registered the flickering light around him, the echoes of chaos fading into a heavy silence that enveloped the moment. His heart raced, a wild drum against the looming shadows. My mother? He whispered, the words tasting like ash. Liv's face twisted with anger and desperation. No, don't listen to her. But something inside him stirred, a quiet yearning to understand. You never told me, he murmured, his voice still. Shaky. I needed to protect you, the dark figure said, her gaze piercing. Your true power lies dormant, and they would have used you against me. Before Leo could respond, a sharp crack split the air, and a blinding light erupted from the far end of the room. Everyone squinted as the brightness engulfed them, shadows retreating in haste. It felt electric, alive, filling the space with an uncanny energy. Stay back, Liv shouted, pulling Leo closer to her as panic crowned the atmosphere. The figures around them faltered, confusion dancing on their faces. But that's when everything changed. The light twisted and morphed, taking shape behind the dark figure. Leo blinked, trying to process what he saw. A boy. No, A younger version of himself was emerging from the light. His heart dropped. The boy looked just like him, but there was something ethereal, something otherworldly about him. "Leo," the figure called, urgency crackling in the air as this new boy pointed directly at him. "You have to remember, they're lying to you." His voice sent chills through Leo's spine. "What do you mean? I'm you, from another time. I was sent to warn you. You need to get out. They're coming." The boy's expression was a mirror of fear that Leo felt deep inside. Time halted. A wave of disbelief crashed over Leo. What? How? But before he could grasp the enormity of this revelation, the woman, his true mother, stepped forward, rage flickering in her eyes. "No, you shouldn't be here," she screeched, as if he were a threat to everything she had built. "What are you hiding?" the boy shouted, voice full of defiance. "You think you can control him forever?" Liv gasped, her breath shaking. "This doesn't make sense," she cried, eyes darting between the figures. The tension had reached a boiling point, thick enough to choke, but the atmosphere shifted again. Suddenly, the window rattled. A gust of wind swept through the mansion, flinging the large door open with a violent crash. The air felt charged, electric, as a group of figures stepped through the threshold. They wore uniforms, adorned with an emblem Leo had never seen, a crest burned into his memory. "Stop," one of them commanded, voice booming, as if it could shake the very foundation of the mansion. "You're all in danger." "Who are you?" Liv shouted, stepping protectively in front of Leo. But before an answer could unfold, the dark figure charged forward, her eyes blazing. "Stay away from him," she cried, attacking the strangers with a ferocity that stopped everyone in their tracks. Chaos erupted. Leo's heart raced, a surge of confusion fueled by panic as the boy, his twin, yelled, "We don't have time. They'll take you." Out of the shadows, one of the newcomers lunged towards Leo, and in that instant, everything snapped into focus. The boy shouted again, "Leo, trust yourself. You're stronger than you know." The walls shook, thunder rumbling in the distance. But just as it felt like everything would break apart, the dark figure reached for Leo, her hand colliding with the younger Leo. A shockwave surged through the room, filling it with bright light and a deafening roar. Leo felt himself pulled, torn between reality and a void that threatened to consume him. The edges of his vision blurred, and a piercing scream sliced through the chaos. A scream that sounded like his own. Then everything went dark, and when the light returned, Leo found himself standing in a different place entirely. An ornate room with gold trim and soft velvet drapes. Confusion coursed through him. The figures were gone, the chaos vanished. But then he looked again. In front of him stood his reflection, but his face wasn't just his own. It morphed into someone else entirely, a figure both frightening and familiar. A smirk spread across the stranger's face, eyes gleaming with mischief. "Welcome back, Leo," said the stranger, crossing his arms. "I've been waiting for you." "What do you mean? Who are you?" Leo gasped, feeling the ground shift beneath him. "Who do you think?" The stranger stepped closer, revealing a slight glimmer of the locket around his own neck, one that looked just like Leo's. A jolt of terror struck Leo. "No, it can't be." The stranger smiled, a sly twist of joy. "What if I told you I'm you from a different choice? The choice that would have led to power, not pain. A different choice?" The walls of Leo's mind slammed shut while lightning crackled overhead. "Join me," the stranger said, extending a hand. "Together, we can reshape everything." Leo's heart slammed in his chest. The mansion trembled under the weight of this new truth. Behind him, echoes of cries and betrayal rang in his ears. Which Leo would he become? And that was it. A choice, standing like a cliff edge before him. Would he step into the unknown, or cling to the path he had just begun to explore? The deeper truth of his existence hung like a sword above them. Would he embrace the darkness waiting to claim him, or would he redefine it? As the darkness swirled, Leo stood there, trapped at the crossroads. Heart racing, breath hitching, uncertainty wrapped around him, whispering, "What will you choose?" Leo stood there, caught at the crossroads, the weight of choice pressing down. Like a thick fog, the figure before him, a reflection of what he might become, extended a hand, temptation wrapped in shadow. "Join me," the stranger urged, voice smooth and persuasive, eyes glinting with a hunger for power. "We can rule this world together." But before Leo could respond, it all shattered. A figure burst into the room. Liv's eyes widened in horror. "No, you can't," she breathed out, and everyone turned. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the room as an ominous energy pulsated from the doorway. "Get away from him," shouted a new voice, cutting through the tension like a knife. The door slammed open, revealing a tall silhouette cloaked in darkness. The light from the chandelier cast looming shadows that danced wildly across the walls. "Who are you?" Leo gasped, clutching the locket at his chest, grounding himself against the rising storm. But before they could grasp what was happening, the new figure stepped forward, and a surge of recognition struck Leo harder than any revelation. It was a woman, his mother, but not the one he'd known. This one bore the same haunting features, but was sharp and fierce, her eyes blazing with a fierce intensity that felt alive. "You don't know who you really are, Leo," she shouted, voice cracking. "You were never meant to be here." The room trembled as if the very foundation shook with her words. Everyone stepped back, eyes darting between her and the strange figure who mirrored Leo. Confusion thickened the air, like smoke. "What do you mean?" Leo's breath hitched. Panic spiked, each heartbeat sounding like an alarm. The weight of her gaze felt like chains. "I'm not just your mother," she continued, her voice growing steadier, more forceful. "I am the reason you are alive, and the reason you should never trust him." She pointed at the shadowed figure. At that moment, Leo felt the ground beneath him shift. It wasn't just about bloodlines or choices. A deeper truth unfurled. His parents had fought a dark battle, hidden from him. The shadows had clung to them, held them captive in ways he'd never fathomed. "Leo," his mother cried, stepping closer, desperation clear in her eyes. "You are part of something bigger, a legacy that stretches beyond this world." And suddenly, the world shifted again. The room darkened as shadows coiled around them. Energy crackled, rising to a fever pitch. "You don't have to follow that path," she warned, gaze fierce as she faced the ever-pressing darkness. But the shadowed figure smirked. "She lies, Leo. Join me. Together we will unleash everything hidden inside." Leo felt the pulsating energy around him grow stronger, almost guiding him. His heart raced. The tension swirled like a tempest, drawing every ounce of his being to the brink. Was he really ready to embrace whatever destiny awaited him? And just when it felt like he had a handle on things, the ground trembled again. Not with fear, but with something sinister and unexpected. The walls radiated a chilling energy. Then, without warning, the windows shattered in 1,000 pieces, a deafening explosion ringing in his ears. But it wasn't the shards of glass that sent shockwaves through Leo. No, that was just the backdrop. A cry pierced the chaos, a familiar piercing scream that froze Leo's blood. "Leo, please, I'm sorry." The voice clawed at his heart, and he whipped around, eyes wide. It was the last person he ever expected to see, his mother from his childhood dreams. Her form flickered in the air, shimmering between worlds, heartbreaking and desperate. "I did this. I had to protect you," she yelled. But the shadows coiled tighter, threatening to consume her. "Mom!" Leo shouted, desperation spilling out as he reached for her. But the shadows surged forward, enveloping her in a rush that felt like the end. And just like that, the world went dark again. The last thing he heard from her was a whisper. "Find the truth," then silence. Leo stood alone, the weight of her words hanging in the air, echoing in his mind. And just like that, everything changed. The choices, the truths, the shadows. He had just uncovered a secret so profound it shifted everything he thought he knew about himself. He felt the cold claw of uncertainty wrap around his throat. What truth was he meant to find? What had he missed? Standing amid the chaos, Leo felt the pulse of the mansion around him. He wasn't just a victim of fate anymore. He was part of a story, far beyond his own. And now he had to decide. Would he follow the shadows? Or would he dare to find the light? Leo stood alone, the weight of his mother's final words hanging thick in the air. The ground felt uncertain beneath his feet, a reminder of everything that had just vanished. Everything he thought he understood. His world had been shaken, and now shadows crept closer, whispering their secrets against the silence. "Find the truth," he repeated softly, each word heavy with unresolved questions. Where was the truth? He blinked, trying to shake the confusion. The chaos echoed in his mind like a haunting melody, and stirring inside was a desperate need to reclaim some sense of control. Then the room trembled again. A low rumble resonated through the walls, making everything vibrate. Dust cascaded from the ceiling, swirling around them like dark snowflakes. "Leo!" Liv's voice broke through the haze. She grabbed his wrist, eyes wide with fear. "We have to get out of here." But before Leo could respond, the shadowed figure, the one who claimed to be his twin, stepped forward, eyes glowing with intensity. "This isn't over. You can't hide from your choices." "What do you want from me?" Leo shouted, desperate to drown out the chaos. "Everything is about to change," the figure hissed, and suddenly the ground beneath their feet cracked open. "Run!" Liv shouted, but it was too late. A blinding light burst from the fissure, swallowing the room whole. Leo felt the heat of it radiate against his skin. He stumbled backward, dragging Liv with him, but the roar of energy pulled them closer to the crack. In an instant, everything shifted, blurring reality into something nightmarish. And then, he fell. He landed on cold, hard ground, and everything shifted again. He gasped, eyes darting around to find himself in a dark forest, trees looming like ancient giants. The sky was a swirl of colors, strange and mesmerizing, casting shadows that danced like haunted souls. "Where are we?" Liv gasped, shaken. Before Leo could answer, the ground trembled again beneath them, and from the shadows, a figure emerged, cloaked and shrouded in darkness. The air thickened with tension as the figure stepped closer, a glint of something familiar shining against the eerie backdrop. "Mother's secrets don't stay buried," the figure said, voice dripping with coldness. A metallic sound rang out as the figure revealed a small, twisted dagger glimmering in the fading light. Leo stumbled back. "What do you want from us?" "Everything," the figure replied, raising the dagger high. "But first, the truth must be unleashed." A sudden explosion rattled the air. A cry echoed through the trees. Leo turned, heart racing. What was that? But before anyone could respond, the forest erupted in chaos. Shadows collided with the bright colors of the sky as the ground morphed again. Everything spun wildly, and Leo felt himself being pulled deeper into a whirlwind of confusion. Then it stopped, and before Leo stood a mirror, a shimmering portal reflecting everything he had ever known. "Look," the figure whispered, "your truth lies within." Struggling against the pull, Leo stepped toward the portal, and suddenly images flashed before him. His childhood, laughter mixed with cries, love intertwined with betrayal. People he thought he'd lost were there, faces familiar yet unfamiliar, each one cloaked in a shroud of secrets. Then a crushing reality hit him like a wave. "No, it can't be," he choked, retreating from the mirror's allure. "This is madness." The figure laughed softly, a sinister sound that echoed in the dark. "Madness is what you make it, Leo. But the truth, your truth, could shatter everything you believe." "What do you mean?" Leo took another step back, Fear clawing at him with sudden ferocity, the figure whispered, "What if I told you that his power could be yours? What if this was never about them?" The figure pointed toward the portal again. "No," Liv shouted, "don't listen to them." But the ground shifted again, and a gust of wind pulled Leo closer to the portal. The whispers of the trees grew louder, and beneath the canopy, silhouettes danced, troubling shadows of people pulling at his heartstrings. The figure grinned, shattering the tension. "You will recall what has been hidden, and the truth will change everything." As Leo's heart raced, questions clawed at his thoughts. What truth? What had he been missing all along? The very fabric of his being teetered on the edge, and the weight of destiny pressed down on him like a heavy cloak. With one final glance at the portal, Leo felt a surge of determination. He was done being lost. The truth needed to be faced, whatever the cost. "What if I refuse?" Leo asked, grounding himself, defiance filling his voice. The figure laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the forest. "Then you'll never know the real power within you, or what's at stake for everyone you love." A deep breath escaped Leo's lips. Everything felt upside down. The forest pulsed with an eerie energy, shadows twisting like a living thing. In that moment he realized he was not just battling external forces. He was up against his own past, and that realization hit him harder than any blow, with the figure's chilling laughter spiraling around him. Leo took a step toward the unknown, heart hammering. Would he face the truth, risking everything, or allow his fears to cage him forever? The twists had only begun, and every choice loomed before him like a ghost. What truths awaited him on this perilous journey? Leo stood at the edge of the portal, dread mixing with an unfurling courage in his chest. Shadows lashed around him, the eerie figure grinning like the devil himself. But Liv's voice pierced through the impending darkness, anchoring him. "Leo, you know your truth. Don't let them manipulate you." A surge of determination roared within him. Memories flooded back, the laughter of his childhood, stolen glances of his mother's warmth, the pain of betrayal. Each image formed a protective armor against the chaos. He glanced back at the portal. It shimmered, inviting him to dive into the unknown, to uncover who he truly was. "This is your moment," Liv shouted, fear threaded with hope. In that instant, Leo directed his gaze to the shadowed figure, spirit igniting with bravery. "You won't control me. My past may be strewn with lies, but my heart is my own." "Foolish boy," the figure hissed, anger morphing his face into a mask of fury. "You think you can defy your destiny?" "Destiny?" Leo spat, stepping closer, feeling his pulse quicken. "It's not something to be dictated by shadows. It's something I fight for." The forest amplified his resolve, the energy crackling like a thunderstorm. Leo pushed forward, feeling the heat emanate from his words. "I will let your darkness drown me." And then, it happened. A wave of light exploded from him. A radiant beam that surged into the ground, exploding outward. The shadows shrieked, recoiling. Leo found himself awash in an otherworldly glow, infusing him with power that felt electric, reshaping his very essence. "Join me," he roared, and the light flickered around him, challenging the shadows closing in. The figure faltered, mouth agape. "No, this isn't possible." The ground trembled beneath their feet, as if the very universe strained against the confrontation. Liv grabbed Leo's hand, grounding him. "Together, we can end this." And together they charged forward, light spilling from their fingertips, engulfing everything in pure illumination. The dark figure howled as the shadows unraveled like threads of smoke caught in a storm. But in that blinding warmth, Leo caught sight of his mother again. Her face now offering a solemn smile, free from the darkness that once held her captive. "You've chosen well, my son," she whispered, then vanished in the glow like morning mist. Sobs bubbled within him, fully aware that this was a goodbye filled with devotion and hope. the final severance from the pain of the past. With one last pulse of energy, Leo watched as the dark figure was consumed, shadows evaporating like dawn casting away the night. Silence fell, but tender hush enveloping them. "Is it over?" Liv breathed, eyes wide with awe. "I think so." Leo felt an overwhelming wave of relief wash over him. They had faced the darkness together. As the colors of the forest shifted to soft pastels, dawn sweeping across the horizon, he shared a proud smile with Liv. "We did it." "Yes, we did," she replied, a tear spilling down her cheek, glimmering like the stars they'd fought so hard to reclaim. But in the air, echoes of their past lingered, a reminder woven deep in their souls. "What do we do now?" Leo asked, glancing at the remnants of the chaos. "We build," Liv replied, determination radiating from her eyes. "A new life, one that no longer belongs to the shadows." Together, they stepped forward, hand in hand, towards a brighter horizon. The past would always be a part of them, but it wouldn't define their future. And in that moment, Leo understood. He was more than a street child or a lost heir. He was a fighter, a beacon in the dark, ready to unveil a new story. But before we part, I have to remind you, this is your time. You have to subscribe right now, so you don't miss any of the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button right now to feed the algorithm and flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see how this ends. Your support makes a difference. Show me you're part of this journey.